Hi, it's Kim Kelly here. Just wanted to start by asking you today, what comes to mind when you hear the name Roald Dahl? If you're anything like me, you think of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or James and the Giant Peach. But did you know that Roald almost lost his nose in a car accident and that he was a chocolate taster for Cadbury, or that he was involved in the Great Mouse Caper of 1924? I didn't know this either until I read this book, Boy by Roald Dahl. And this is an autobiography. It was written by Roald himself, and it tells stories of his young life and his school years. It meets the genre of autobiography or nonfiction biography, um, because it isn't accurate, it's well written, it is worth reading, and it contains many photos and illustrations that increase the credibility of the work. And I liked this book because throughout it has a theme of being positive, even in times of trial, and keeping your sense of humor through hard times, and also because of the stories that he tells, and there are some very funny stories. I'd like to share one example. When Roald was a young boy, he used to walk to and from school with his friends, and they would go past a sweet shop every day, and they stopped all the time. And this was the best place in the world to them. And the only thing they didn't like about the sweet shop was the owner, Mrs. Pratchett. She was just a grumpy old lady, and she never smiled, and she didn't like them. And possibly the worst thing about her were her hands. They were grimy and greasy and filthy, and she would use them to dish out the candy out of the jars with her bare hands, and they really didn't like that. So one day when Roald found a dead mouse, he came up with a plan that he later called the Great Mouse Caper of 1924. And what he did, the other boys distracted Mrs. Pratchett while Roald put a mouse into the jar of gobstoppers. And the boys thought they were just hilarious as they left, and she didn't see them do this. So the next day, when they came to the store and saw a closed sign on the door, they were very shocked. The sweet shop had never been closed before. And let me read a little excerpt of what happened next. It says, "We pressed our faces against the window and looked inside. Mrs. Pratchett was nowhere to be seen. 'Look,' I cried, 'the gobstopper jar's gone. It's not on the shelf. There's a gap where it used to be.' 'It's on the floor,' someone said. 'It's smashed to bits, and there's gobstoppers everywhere.' 'There's the mouse,' someone shouted. We could see it all, the huge glass jar smashed to smithereens with the dead mouse lying in the wreckage, and hundreds of many-colored gobstoppers littering the floor." So the boys conclude that Mrs. Pratchett had become so scared when she found the mouse that she dropped the jar and had a heart attack. And Roald is very worried that he's going to go to jail for this act. And I won't tell you what actually happens to him in the end. You'll have to read that for yourself. But it's a great story. And I like this book for the reason that these fun stories can be shared by a teacher when reading his works of fiction, just to give insight into who he was, and to help you know him a little better. So Amazon recommends this book for ages 8 to 12, but I would recommend it for older children or young adults, just because it does contain several instances that he was beaten by schoolmasters, and it shares that in detail, and also physical and verbal abuse from older boys at school, and graphic detail of some surgeries that he goes through. So I think small excerpts can be shared with younger children, but the book in its entirety is better for older kids. But I still loved this, and I thought there was a lot to be gained from it. It helped me understand Roald Dahl a little more and gave me insight into his writings, and I think you should read it too. Thanks.